First up, this video, this title, the thumbnail, it's not clickbait, okay? It's not clickbait. If you give me the full length of the video, I will prove to you why learning R programming is easy. Specifically, I'm going to cover 4 things in this video. 1, I'm going to cover why any professional that's interested in having more impact at work with data should learn R programming. 2, I'm going to show you why learning R programming is the quickest and easiest way to unlock advanced analytics in your work. 3, if you want to accelerate this journey, if you want to get from analyzing data in Excel pivot tables to working with data in R programming as quickly and as easily as possible, I will cover my online course, R Programming Made Easy. And then 4, if that's not right for you, if you would rather use free online resources and self-study to make the journey from Excel pivot tables to R programming, I will cover that as well. So let's get started with the first topic, which is why would you want to learn R programming anyway? R programming is not just for the cool data science kids at companies like Amazon and Netflix. And the reason for this is simple. 2 words, data mining. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of data mining, that's okay. We'll use a very simple working definition for the purposes of this video. Data mining is the act, the work, the process of extracting new and interesting insights or associations from data that can be exploited for economic gain. Now, that's just a real fancy way of saying simply this. Can you use data to increase profits or decrease costs? That's basically it. And oftentimes, the tools and techniques that allow you to do that most effectively can't easily be done or can't be done at all in Excel. So that's where R comes in. It's useful for any professional, whether you work in HR or marketing, finance, supply chain, product management, IT, you name it. I have personally worked as a hands-on analytics professional supporting almost all of those business functions that I just mentioned, and I use data mining techniques all the time in that role to help out the business. And by the way, I'm talking about things like machine learning, cluster analysis, market basket analysis, and even, quite frankly, some very sophisticated data visualization. Sometimes that's all you need is just the right data visualization will make an insight pop, and then you can take action in the business to either increase revenue or decrease costs. So data mining, unlocking that capability is the primary reason why any professional should be interested in learning R programming. Next up, let's talk about why R programming is the best way for you as a professional to unlock advanced analytics, data mining techniques like machine learning, cluster analysis, market basket analysis, that sort of thing. And the reason is quite simple. Your Excel skills map directly to R and therefore makes learning R programming both fun and easy. And I don't expect you to believe me by me just saying that. So let me go and show you what I mean with a very specific example of how your Excel skills will make R programming very easy to learn. So here I am in handy dandy Excel. And what I have here is a table of data. Now you might be saying to yourself, wow, Dave, great, a table of data in Excel. This is super profound. But think about this for a second. There's a lot going on with a table of data, a simple table of data in Excel. So for example, this table has a name. I've given it the name iris_data. So I've named this object within the Excel universe as iris_data. And Excel is smart. It says, okay, cool. Whenever Dave references iris_data in some code he types into a cell, I know he's talking about all of this data here, this collection of data, these 5 columns, and it happens to be 150 rows of data. And of course, the column names, it recognizes that. So that's one aspect. Tables also have different things going on just besides the name. They have columns, as I said before, and these columns have names, and they have rows of data. Tables have individual cells. They have cell ranges, like here's a range of cells right here. And most importantly, believe it or not, tables have data formatting, right? So this column of data right here is formatted as a numeric, as a number. Same with this one, same with this one, same with this one. This one's formatted as text. Excel does a lot of stuff before you, behind the scenes, because Excel loves you and Excel wants you to have a really good time working with data. So it does a lot of things for you automatically. One of the things that it does is it automatically detects the data format and assigns it for you without you having to do anything. Now, a lot of the times, and if you've used Excel a lot, you know what I'm about ready to say. Sometimes Excel picks the wrong format and it wants to pick this format and you're like, no, it's actually this format. And that can be quite the pain. So Excel's got both good sides and bad sides. But irrespective, whether you tell Excel something or not, it does a lot of things for you automatically. So for example, data formatting. Also, if you don't give a table a name explicitly, Excel's going to give you a table name no matter what. It has a default naming convention and it just names tables itself, even if you don't give it a name, because it requires that. So it does a lot of stuff for you. Even in a simple table, there's a lot going on. And here's the thing, right? A table of data is the single most fundamental object, the single most fundamental concept in Excel. You work with tables of data, whether it's an explicit table like this, or it's a pivot table, or even if it's just data that hasn't been explicitly formatted as a table, but is in tabular format in the worksheet. Tables of data is what Excel works with. It is the most basic object that there is. Here's the cool thing, right? You spend a lot of time working with tables of data in Excel, and you also spend a lot of time, and I mentioned this earlier, maybe you caught on to this, you also spend a lot of time in Excel writing code, programming. And let me show you what I mean by that. So I've got a table of data, and a very common thing to do in Excel when you're working with data, analyzing data, is to write code against tables of data or using tables of data. And let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to be in column cell G2 here, and I am going to write some Excel code. The equal sign, right? This thing right here tells Excel, when I hit the enter key, after I hit equals and I type in some stuff and I hit enter, Excel knows that that equal sign says, oh, hey, Dave is giving me some instructions. He wants me to do something. So after he hits enter, if I see equals right there, I'm going to try and read whatever he typed after that, and I'm going to interpret it. And if it makes sense to me, if it's legit, I will execute those instructions. That's programming. That's programming. As we'll see here in a second, when I move over to our world, it's exactly the same thing. But let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say I want to calculate the average of the petal width column. I got a bunch of data here, 150 pieces of data, right, in that petal width column, 150 rows of data. You can't see them all, just trust me, there's 150 rows. And I just want to know the average because I'm trying to get some sort of idea of what's going on in the data. So I use the average, which is a measure of location, a measure of central tendency of the data. So I'm going to go ahead and do an average. And Excel is pretty cool. It says, hey, I understand what you're doing here. So it gives me some IntelliSense tips here to help me out with my coding. And it says, what do you want to calculate the average of? Because you got to calculate the average of some numbers here, Dave. So what kind of numbers do you want me to work with? And I say, okay, cool. I want you to go to the iris underscore data table. Notice that already Excel's smart. It's like, oh yeah, he's typing in iris. I know there's an object in the workbook called iris. It happens to be a table. And you see that little table icon? Awesome. So if I hit tab, notice now that the entire table, this object, is highlighted. But it doesn't really work. We can't really do an average on this entire table because we got the species column, which is a data format that isn't numeric. So what we wanted though was the petal width column. So we can say, okay, let's go ahead and specify the petal width column. So look at that. See, Excel is smart. It knows about objects in the workbook. And you can just click on that or hit tab. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And I can finish off my code. And notice that everything gets highlighted. I am telling Excel, hey Excel, I want you to execute this function call, average, on this data object. It happens to be a petal.width named column of the iris underscore data table. Now, notice how cool this is, right? Notice how cool this is. Notice how we're building up on all these base concepts. Petal.width is actually a cell range, because notice that the highlight here in blue only includes rows 2 through 151, because Excel is smart enough to realize that petal.width is a column. It's a cell range that includes a column, but we don't put the column in the average function because that doesn't make any sense. So notice here how smart everything is right here, right? We know we're working with objects, we're working with tables, we're working with columns, which are in fact cell ranges, we're working with functions. And when we hit enter, boom, magic happens. This is code. This is the essence of coding. If you're even interested, even remotely in this, I'm going to say something that's kind of computer sciencey because that's my background. This is what's known as a command line interpreter experience. We can use a cell as a command line. We type in the code, the commands that we want Excel to execute. We hit enter. If we type things incorrectly and it makes sense to Excel, it executes it for us and it gives us back a result. That's command line experience. That's very common in the programming world, as we're going to see here in a second. So make no mistake, when you use Excel like I'm doing right here, you are coding. You are coding. And to prove it to you, let's go ahead and flip over to our world and see how very similar these two experiences actually are. So here I am in our world. This happens to be our studio. You can kind of think of our studio as being analogous as Excel. Excel is like this big, awesome program. It has lots of data analysis goodness built into it, and you can use it different kinds of ways. Our studio is the same thing in our world. And in our world, I have a table of data. In R, these are also known as data frames, but you often hear people use terms of tables and data frames interchangeably. So you can see here I have the iris_data data frame in our world, or a table of data. And notice that it's got columns, just like we saw in Excel world, all the same columns. And down here you can see it's 150 entries. There's 150 rows of data, 5 total columns. So notice right now, everything that you understand in Excel world about tables maps 100% to our world. Tables, or data frames in R, they have names, they have columns, they have rows, they have individual cells, they have cell ranges, which are called vectors in R, but conceptually they're exactly the same thing, right? It's just a collection of values. And these columns of data in an R data frame, in an R table, also have data formatting. In R, they're called data types, but conceptually they're exactly the same thing. These are numeric columns of data, and this is a textual column of data. Everything is exactly the same conceptually. Yes, they're called different things and there's subtle nuances, but in general, everything that you know about Excel in this space of working with data directly translates to R. And this makes R programming much, much easier. Because what you do is, as you're learning R, you just think about it in terms of Excel and things just make sense. So for example, code, right? We just saw how we wrote code in Excel. We're going to do the same thing in R, and here's the kicker. It's going to look almost exactly the same. So what I do is I go down here, instead of a cell, instead of clicking on a cell in Excel and typing equals, I just have this little arrow thing here and my blinking cursor, which is basically the same thing. And I can type in commands. I can type in function calls against tables of data just like I do in Excel. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the mean function. Now, if you're not familiar, the mean is just another name for average. So you use the average function in Excel, and in R, you use the mean. They mean, no pun intended, exactly the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to invoke the mean function, and I'm going to use a parenthesis just like I do in Excel. And I'm going to type in iris_data because I need to feed into the mean function in R a collection of numeric values, just like I do in Excel. And I'm going to get these values from the iris_data data frame, the iris_data table. Now, in Excel, to access the column of data that I was interested in using, in this case petal.width, I use square brackets. In R, you use a $, but conceptually they're the same thing. They are a way of telling the interpreter. In Excel, we use the square brackets, and in R, we use the $, to say, hey, go access that table, the thing on the left, left of the square bracket in Excel, left of the $ in R, go access it and find the column, find the cell range that I'm interested in, or the vector in our terminology. So I'm going to use the $ here, and just like we saw in Excel when I typed the square bracket, I get some help. It understands what's going on. It says, hey, Dave wants to access this table. These are the columns of data that are in that particular table. And we need petal.width, that's what we want. And if I hit enter, boom, I get 1.199333, just like I did in Excel. Just to make things really crystal clear, I'm going to go ahead and type the Excel code here in R, even though it won't work. R will be like, dude, I don't understand that, Dave. It's okay, but I just want to type it in so you guys can see how very much like they are. There's our square data, square petal.width. Oops, petal.width. This right here is our world. This right here is Excel world. Oop, missed the A. Oop, missed the A again. Look how similar this code is. It's not exactly 100% the same. No, it's not. But it's not that big of a mental leap to go from writing Excel code to writing R code. And there's more. There's so much more. This is just one example, but there's so much more. I already said that twice. Sorry about that. So for example, Vlookup. If you work in Excel at all, you know that at some point you usually have a table of data and then you have another table of data. Let's say like this is some sort of lookup table, like maybe this table has product IDs and this one has the product names and descriptions or something like that. And you want to combine this table with the other table. So you use the Vlookup function or maybe XLOOKUP, but you use some sort of lookup function in Excel. That's how you combine two tables of data. That is known as a join in R programming. I'm joining two tables of data together. And here's the awesome thing. Your knowledge of Vlookup, the way it works, the things that you have to do to get it to work, the way you code it up, the concepts map 100% to doing joins in R. So that makes learning joins so much easier because you just think about, oh, hey, I'm writing R code. Okay, in Excel I would do this, and in R I have to do that. It makes things much easier to learn and much easier for you to actually write code productively. So all that to say, your Excel knowledge makes learning R fun and easy. Over the years, I have successfully taught hundreds of working professionals R programming in a live classroom setting. And I'm talking about professionals ranging from PhDs working for the US Department of Energy, all the way to career people managers with little to no technical skills and everybody in between. And what I've done is I've taken all of that knowledge, all of those experiences, which you saw, by the way, in this last video section, right, where I mapped Excel to R. That's stuff that I've learned in the live classroom setting. And I've taken all of that knowledge, all those experiences, and incorporated them into an online training class called R Programming Made Easy. And what I would like to do now is walk you through briefly the curriculum of this course, because hopefully you will believe me now that you've seen what you saw in the previous video section when I say I honestly can teach any professional to analyze data using R programming, whether you've ever coded before or not, as you just saw, right? If you've got Excel skills, I can teach you to analyze data with R programming. So let's take a brief look at the R Programming Made Easy curriculum. Okay, I'm going to need to ask for your forgiveness here. I'm going to use the iceberg cliche. So imagine, if you will, Excel and R were like icebergs. You see just a little bit of these technologies, these respective technologies, above this hypothetical waterline. So what we have here is essentially a conceptual mapping between Excel world and R world. And this is why learning R programming is easy for Excel users, because in the beginning, when you first get started, you stay above the waterline. And what you can see here is a conceptual mapping, and we've already talked about this. We have tables in Excel world. We have data frames in R. We have common functions in Excel, things like average and sum. As we've seen, we also have common functions in R world. We have pivot tables in Excel, which are obviously super awesome. In the R world, there is a particular technology, a particular way of writing our code called Dplyr, which essentially allows you to do is basically the same thing that you do in pivot tables. That's a bit of a simplification because Dplyr can do a lot more than simple pivot tables, but conceptually, that's the way to think about it, right? I pivot tables of data, I group data, I create summaries, that sort of thing. Dplyr helps you do that in the R world. Next up, you have charts in Excel, data visualizations. You have regular charts, and then you got pivot charts, that sort of thing. And in the R world, you have this technology called ggplot2, which is just a particular way of creating data visualizations. And by the way, just so you know, as good as Excel is at creating data visualizations, creating charts and graphs and that sort of thing, and it's very good at that, R is even better. R is actually way, way better. So just so you know. This is speaking from somebody who uses Excel every day and also R. So I'm not trying to say I'm biased against Excel because I definitely use it and I think it's a great tool. However, R is just more powerful. So here's the kicker, right? Make no mistake. You can do a lot at the highest level, but you can also go down. You can also go below the waterline if you'd like. And in the Excel world, you could think about things like using the analysis tool pack or the solver, or Excel has a large number of statistical functions. And you can stay above the waterline to be sure, and you can get a lot accomplished at that level. But if you need more power, you can go below the waterline. And that's what you have in Excel world. And you've got things over here in our world, market basket analysis, statistical analyses, essentially any sort of statistical analysis that you can do in Excel, you can also do in R and more, not surprisingly. You can do things like cluster analysis. Now notice that these two things I had mentioned earlier in the video as data mining techniques, which is why R is particularly awesome, because once you learn R, you start unlocking a world of advanced analytics in the data mining space, like cluster analysis, market basket analysis. But we're not done, right? You can keep going further down or deeper in this iceberg metaphor. So in Excel, you can use things like Power Query and DAX and Visual Basic for Applications or VBA. And if you don't know what these things are, that's okay. They're basically programming languages in Excel. And if you do know what they are, then you know what I'm talking about. In our world, you can go to things like machine learning, which is one of the data mining techniques that I mentioned earlier, wildly useful to any professional, not just the cool data science kids at Google and Facebook. And you can actually write production code. You can actually write production data pipelines. You can write your own custom libraries or custom packages in R. And again, if you don't know what these things are, don't worry about it. It's not important. The core idea is this, is that you can basically choose your own adventure in a very real way. But make no mistake, you don't have to go below the waterline because you can achieve a lot at this level. This right here, this above the waterline analogy, metaphor, idea is what makes R programming easy to learn in the beginning for Excel users, because you stay above the waterline where you can still get a lot done. You can accomplish many, many things. Similarly, when you first learn R, you stay above the waterline and you can learn a lot. And your Excel knowledge allows you to rapidly and easily learn R programming. And then once you've learned those aspects of R, then you can say, do I want to go below the waterline? Because then you can choose your own adventure. You can say, look, I do want to learn some data mining techniques. I know R and I can do a lot of awesome stuff, but you know what? I really, really want to start doing some of this data mining stuff that Dave's talking about because it's really cool and super powerful, and it will allow me to be more effective at work. And here's the great thing. Once you learn this part above the waterline, then you don't need to worry about learning R programming. You start focusing on how to do, for example, machine learning. And just in case you're interested, I do offer a course that introduces folks to machine learning. It is designed for any professional. Minimal math, actually the math is optional. Don't tell anybody I said that. But it does require that you know how to do R programming. It requires that you know these things, and then once you do know them, you can start doing data mining with machine learning. So it's super, super awesome to use your Excel knowledge to go learn R above the waterline, and that unlocks everything below the waterline. I want to talk a little bit about what's in the online course, not surprisingly. So first up, know this. I'm not going to drain the entire course curriculum. I'm only going to hit some highlights here. The course includes more than 9 hours of video lecture. 9 hours of video lecture, 8 hands-on coding exercises, and 4 hands-on labs for a total of 12 hands-on coding experiences. This is designed as a complete introduction to R programming on that above the waterline set of topics. Tables, common functions, Dplyr, and ggplot2, right? Because those are the base things that you need to essentially mimic the kinds of things that you would do above the waterline in Excel, but do them in our world. And by the way, as I said before, ggplot2 allows you to create data visualizations that are much more powerful than what you could create in Excel, and R can work with a lot more data than Excel can. So if you ever ran into the problem of Excel starting to slow down, starting to chug real slow because you had too many rows of data, R doesn't have that problem. And by the way, just so you know, there's a link up here where you can click on it and you can go to the landing page for R Programming Made Easy, the online course here, and you can see these preview buttons. So if you scroll to the bottom of the page, there will be a course curriculum section on that webpage that looks just like this. And you can watch free previews of a number of the lessons here. So you can see how I teach and you can get some sort of flavor, some sort of understanding of the kinds of things that you're going to learn. So you can see here, it starts with the very basics. I teach you how to install R on both Windows and Macintosh because R works both the same on both Windows and Mac. And then we start talking about all the basics. Moving on, you're going to learn about Dplyr, as I mentioned, which is the pivot table-ish kinds of functionality in R. You're going to learn how to visualize data with ggplot2. And there'll be a running example throughout the hands-on labs. There'll be 4 hands-on labs, as I mentioned before, around working with a real machine learning type data set so that you have a context. You're going to be answering essentially a business question. You're going to be analyzing a set of data in the context of a business question throughout the course. So you learn how to wrangle and visualize data. This is the 2 fundamental skills, not surprisingly, if you're going to learn R programming to do data analyses. And you will learn everything that you need in this course to do that. So just so you know, this isn't theory. This course has been taken by real world professionals and they've gotten real results. So here you've got a testimonial from Ray. Ray works in healthcare and he predominantly works in Tableau, which is a data visualization tool, but he wanted to up his data analysis skills. He wanted to up the power of his data analyses. So he took the R programming course and he really, really enjoyed it. So much so that he said, hey, look, I will definitely be signing up for Dave on Data future offerings. And he did. He purchased my machine learning course as well. And he's currently taking that in addition to R Programming Made Easy. So all that to say, this is not a theoretical course. Real life professionals are taking it, up-leveling their data analysis skills and seeing benefit from it. So if you decide that accelerating your journey with Dave on Data courses is the right thing for you, just know that you get support from me. So this is a real life question that was asked by a student in the online course platform, and you can see my response here. And I need to stress this because I want to make sure that you understand that I am going to support you on your journey. So I answer student questions promptly. I'm actually kind of obsessed about it. I'm constantly on my phone. And if I see an email come in that says, hey, Dave, there's a new question on R Programming Made Easy, I go upstairs in my house and I log onto the computer and I answer the question. Here's the really cool thing about this, though. Not only do I answer student questions promptly, but since I give you as a student, as a customer of Dave on Data, lifetime access to the course materials, you also, as a consequence, get lifetime access to me. For as long as you want to ask questions about the course materials, about R programming, you can ask them and I will answer them. This is a webinar, right? It's even in the title. So there is a special offer here. If you're interested in accelerating your journey, if you want to move from analyzing data in Excel to unlocking advanced analytics with R programming, I want to help you out on that journey. So I'm happy to be able to offer you a 20% discount off the purchase price of the course. All you need to do is use coupon YouTube. And once again, you can click up here to get to the course page where you can enroll, or alternatively, there will be a link below in the description. So there you have it. R Programming Made Easy. I showed you why it's easy. I showed you how my course leverages your Excel knowledge and teaches you R programming in a fun and easy way by concentrating just on that above the waterline set of topics that is needed for analyzing data. So that'll get you up to speed quickly. You could literally be up and running in R programming in a couple of weeks using my course. You study it a few nights and weekends, you do the hands-on exercises, you do the hands-on labs, and then boom, you're using R programming at work. And here's the great thing. R is completely free. So you don't have to go ask budget. You don't have to go ask your IT department for budget. You don't have to ask your boss for budget. As long as you can install software on your laptop, you can install R. It's completely free, and you can be off and running analyzing data and also unlocking advanced analytics like machine learning. Just so you know, if you have any questions at all, you can head over to my website, daveondata.com, and just click on the contact form. And you can send me any questions and I will get back to you promptly. So if you're like, hey Dave, I saw your YouTube webinar and I'm really interested, but I need to know X, just drop me an email and I'll get back to you. So I hope to see you enrolled in R Programming Made Easy very soon. I am totally open to the possibility that you might be saying, yeah, great Dave, you got an online course, yeah, it's innovative, it's great, but that doesn't work for me. What I really want is free self-study resources. I got this, I can handle it myself. So what I will show you now are the 2 best free resources for learning R programming that I've found so far. And they are these 2 books, okay? They are freely available online, but they are so good I actually own physical copies. Now, there are going to be links to these books in the description below this video. So you can go ahead and click on them and you can go to the website version of these 2 books. So I just want to make sure that I'm crystal on this point. These are very, very good books. However, if you're not necessarily super familiar with programming, they can be a little bit daunting. And let me show you what I mean by that. So here I am in the free online version, the website version of Hands-On Programming with R. Now, this is not a very large book. It's only maybe about that thick. And as a programming book, it's very good, but it's very much a programming book. You won't find any sort of references to Excel or any sort of mapping conceptually from what you know about Excel to R programming. So you're going to need to do that yourself. And let me show you an example of what I mean by that. In this book, there's coverage of data frames, which are the objects in R that represent tables of data. So let's go ahead and navigate to coverage of data frames here in the book. And I'll go ahead and collapse the sidebar here so we have a little bit more real estate. And what you can see here is, make no mistake, very good coverage of data frames from a programming perspective. And you can see here, they're talking about columns of data and data types or data formatting in Excel. You can see here some code and how things work, so on and so forth. And as we saw earlier in this video, R code looks an awful lot like Excel code. So from that perspective, if you're really familiar with Excel code, which I'm assuming you are, you could probably do the mental mapping between what you see here in the book and what you see in your mind's eye when you think about Excel. And by the way, this book uses a nice running example of creating casino games, which is kind of fun. So that's a great aspect of the book. And like I said, this is a very, very good programming book on R. However, it can be daunting if you've never programmed before, but it is totally doable. So let's talk about the next book. So you start with this book, right? This book teaches you the basics. It's not very large. And there are certain aspects of the book that aren't necessarily super useful for you to begin with. For example, this book covers functions. I don't cover functions in my course because generally speaking, when you're analyzing data, you don't need to write your own functions. But that's okay. You can read the entire book and learn all these things, and that's great. So next up, after you read this book, you're going to want to take a look at this book, which is R for Data Science by Hadley Wickham. And if you're not familiar with Hadley, Hadley's a giant in the R world. He has literally invented new ways of working with data in R that have become the de facto standard. So he's essentially invented his own kind of meta language on top of R, which is called the tidyverse. And that is what everyone uses in reality, in practice. When they use R to work with data, they're using the tidyverse. And my class teaches the tidyverse, by the way. My online class does teach the tidyverse, because why wouldn't it? So this book is great because it teaches you the tidyverse. It teaches an awesome way to work with data. So let's talk about one particular aspect of this book that you would want to read, and that is joins. In Excel, you use the Vlookup function often to join or combine two tables of data. So you use Vlookup, you combine tables of data in Excel. In the programming world, that's known typically as a join. And in particular, when you have a table of data in Excel and you use a Vlookup to combine data with it, you're doing what is known as a outer join. So let's take a look at Hadley's coverage of outer joins to show you what you get in the book here. So we're going to go to relational data, and then we're going to go to mutating joins, and then we're going to go to an outer join, because as I said, a Vlookup is akin to an outer join. And once again, just like the previous book that we saw, this is a very good book. That's why I own a physical copy of it, even though I can get it free online, because I liked having a physical copy and I wanted to support the author. But it is a programming book, first and foremost. And as I scroll through the content here for joins, you can see that it's very programming centric. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a former software engineer myself. However, for some folks, they might find this, once again, a bit daunting. Basically, what you'll need to do is read the book, and as you're reading it, think in your mind's eye aspects of working with Vlookups, and then map them. And that's the easiest way to start grokking, understanding what's going on with outer joins in our programming, is to put it in the context of Vlookups. Now, not surprisingly, in my online class, I do this explicitly, but you can totally do it yourself using this free online book. So there you have it. These are the free resources. As I said before, the links will be in the description below the video, so you can access them if you'd like. Why R programming is easy to learn for any professional interested in having more impact at work with data analysis. If you're interested in accelerating your journey, you can take my online course, R Programming Made Easy. You can click on the link up here or click on the link below to access the page to learn more about the course. And by the way, don't forget, if you're interested in buying the course and enrolling, use coupon code YouTube to save 20%. Or if it's better for you to use free online resources and do self-study to learn R programming, we covered that as well in this video. I hope to see you enrolled in R Programming Made Easy very soon, and to have the opportunity to answer any questions you might have. Until next time, please stay healthy, and I wish you very happy data sleuthing.